So, hey folks, I'm Suraj. I'm a senior engineer at Hasura. So today I'm going to talk about a very interesting feature called remote table authorization. So as the name suggests, so we're basically extending the permission our authorization boundaries across the data sources. So it's not like you have a data source and you should have a authorization rule that relates to that particular data source. So we are basically crossing the boundaries. So really excited. To give a sense of like what this feature about. So think of like a remote relationship. So basically this feature allows you to join the data across different data sources, right? So we also have permissions, which is basically the role-based access control with custom rules, right? So you can have a rule, you can define multiple roles, and then you can have, custom rules on that particular table or the data source to say that this is the permission, this is the way of access control I want for this particular one. So what if these two are combined, right? So that's what exactly this feature all about. So I'm gonna get into a quick demo now. So to summarize the setup, I have a Snowflake database wherein I have a table called invoice, and then I have another database called user seed. So as you can see, these two are like sitting in different data sources altogether. And then if you look at the invoice table, what I have here is a customer ID, and some billing information. So imagine this customer ID is very specific to your payment system. Maybe it is tracked in a slightly different way, and the user table which you are having is something that comes in from the auth setup, and wherein you have an internal user ID sort of a thing. So usually what we'll do is with the remote relationship, we'll have a remote relationship configured like this. So if you want to take a look at this, this is how it is configured. The customer ID is mapped onto the invoice user ID. So to help you understand what is invoice user ID in my setup, it's a user ID which is kept on the invoice table or your third party table. So basically it is mapped. And then when I go to the permission bit, previously what you can do is you can only have columns or local relationships as part of your permission rule. But with this setup, you can now have a remote relationship as your the permission rule, which basically opens up a lot of possibilities. Like for example, you want to check, hey, my authorization setup relies on the Hasura user ID, which comes from user ID of the users table, but the relationship is actually using a different ID called customer ID, right? So in that case, I don't have to specifically, use a third-party webhook or maybe a different solution to, pull the data and set up some custom rule. Instead, I can simply define, hey, use this remote relationship for my permission, and then use user ID is equal to X user ID, not the invoice user ID or customer ID. So with this simple setup, what I can do is I can simply query the invoice table with Xhasura role as user and then Xhasura user ID as one. So what happens is I'll just pull out the user object as well, just to help you understand how things works. So as you can see, the internal user has a user ID 1, and for this particular user ID, we have an invoice user ID called 8, right? So on this invoice table, all that we have is customer ID is equal to 8. And for some situation, I may have to hide this, internal references and make sure that the external facing API is not really, consuming all my, or maybe it's not leaking all the external data or internal data. So in this case, what I can also do is I can simply hide, the user's permission. I'm going to delete this permission, which will make this user's table invisible to the external, GraphQL schema. So what happens is I'll not be having access to the users table. You can do it as if you want, but for the demo, I just want to show you magic. So So basically, when you query the invoice, you get all the invoices uh, for the customer 8, but on this request, you don't have any request or any identification for user ID 8, right? So you get all the remote. Um, so basically, the authorization is taken from the remote table, but you're querying the simple table. And if you really want to understand how this works with Hasura, you can simply click on Analyze button. What it gives you is, it gives you the generated SQL that's gonna get executed on the upstream database, and then you'll also see the actual query here. So in this query, you can see the query says invoice.customer ID in 8, right? So basically, Hasura went ahead and fetched the user ID, fetched the user table, and then it fetched the user customer ID equal to 8. So that is already included in the actual query. So it's really interesting. You can also do things like one level down. Say if you want to create a permission called manager, and then if you want to set up things like, hey, I want the rule to be internal user dot manager ID is equal to x hasura user ID. So in that case, if a user has user ID, if the user is manager, then they can use the role to specify. They can use that role to access this data without even go doing multiple queries. So the end user will simply be querying, hey, give me all the invoices which I have access to, or maybe I can have some conditions. So all the access across all the data sources will be taken care by the Hasura instance. And this feature is right now available on the latest version v2.33, but the console support will be added on the next release. And you will be able to access or use this feature across all the GDC based databases and Postgres data sources. With that, I'm gonna wrap up the demo. I'll be available for any questions on the chat. So thank you, folks.